I'm your host, Sarah Baus, and welcome to Attainable Podcast. Hi guys, welcome to the Attainable Podcast. My name is Sarah Baus. If you are new, I'm so excited that you're here and I'm so excited for the interview that we have today. Today, I'm talking with Maddie Miles. She's an integrative health practitioner, a female hormone specialist, an herbalist, and the founder of Peace Love Hormones, which is a brand that ends period stigma and educates and empowers menstruators through education and top quality supplements. We went into so much information. Before we get started, I do want to give a little bit of a overview of what we talked about. So we talked about menstrual cycles, we talked about hormone healing, and we also talked about sex. So if you have any children, like young kids in the room, maybe something to listen on your own, although we do talk a little bit about opening that conversation to your kids and taking down this stigma. So we get into a lot. It's so fascinating. I'm sure this is going to be a longer podcast, but it is worth the listen. I also wanted to let you know of a discount code that she so generously provided. If you use the code podcast, go to her Peace Love Hormones website and we'll have everything linked down below. You can get 10% off of her products. She's got an amazing ebook and she just released a supplement this year that has helped so many women already. So definitely check that out. All right, let's get into the interview. Hi, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. I've been following you for a long time and I know you get like an influx of questions all over your social media and that's not going to stop here. Like I've gathered all my questions and I was like, let's just make this into a podcast episode. So I am so excited to have you on.
Yay, thank you so much for having me. I love being on podcast, whether it's my own podcast or guest starring on others' podcast. And thank you for doing what you do as well. And it's just making, natural health more available to everyone. So I love podcasts. It's so cool that we can just be, walking our dog or driving to work or whatever we're doing, and we can still be learning and just becoming healthier and happier.
Yeah, I'm podcast obsessed. I was podcast obsessed before I had one. I'm known as like the podcast girl. So I'm with you on that. I love podcasts. So let's go ahead and talk about your journey for a little bit. How did you get into all of this? You're so knowledgeable and that's something that really I think stands out on your platform is you're so education based and like information rich. How did you get into all of this like natural wellness, hormone health and all that?
Thank you. And thank you for saying that because, social media is so saturated with so many accounts, and it can be really confusing and overwhelming to like sort out all of the conflicting information. So thank you for saying that. I really do. Some people consider me a little bit more woo-woo in some of my practices, literally just because I include the mind, body, and spirit
Yeah.
all together, which is
Yeah.
not woo-woo, it's
Yeah.
science.
Yeah.
But I am very science and fact-based. And so, my journey really started around when I was in fifth grade, and I had many imbalances going on within my body. However, we weren't running functional labs. A lot of that stuff, it just wasn't, it wasn't as mainstream as it is today. And so what was happening? I wasn't sleeping well. I had insomnia. I was really, really anxious. I was depressed. And so my parents just took me to see different specialists. And I love both of my parents so much. They're my greatest of friends. And they were very, very proactive in the ways that they thought they were really helping me, if that makes sense. Like
Yes.
we found out later down the line. I mean, I'm talking 8+ years before I finally started seeing like integrative specialists who practiced, functional medicine testing and, a more integrative approach to healing the body at a root cause level. But until that point, I went through the total ringer with, conventional medicine, seeing all of the, I'm air quoting right now, top specialist in Chicago. That's where I was not born, but where I was raised. And, being submitted into different hospital programs and partial hospitalization for, again, just what were imbalances within my body, but were showing as anxiety, depression, insomnia, and then turned into anorexia nervosa disorder when I was in seventh grade. So about 2 years after my anxiety diagnosis. And I really just, I was in this like roller coaster of a battle with an eating disorder, which was really kind of the forefront, or at least that was what was addressed was the eating disorder by, doctors and all the programs that I went in through. It's like, let's just feed her. By the way, it was not nutritious food. It was like, let's, feed her through feeding tubes, through shoving food down her throat. And then, once she puts back on the weight, she is air quotes recovered. And for anyone listening to this, especially people who have suffered from an eating disorder, it goes way beyond the weight. It starts in the mind, and everyone has different, you know, connections. Everyone has different reasons for their eating disorders manifesting how they did. I actually just realized mine last Friday after, oh my goodness, 12 plus years of not understanding my eating disorder. I finally had a breakthrough last Friday, and I still get chills thinking about it. But anyway, long story short, it was connected to ancestral trauma, and I understand why it happened now, which is great. But I'm, long recovered from my eating disorder, and I really started to recover when I hit rock bottom for what felt like the millionth time, but it was the third time that I ended up back in the hospital. I was actually studying abroad in Spain, had to be sent back to the US because I had lost too much weight. I wasn't having bowel movements because I wasn't eating enough. No duh. And was sent back, was hospitalized with a feeding tube, 24-hour nurse. Like it was, that was true rock bottom for me right there. And I was just laying in that hospital bed and, I knew something needed to change. I finally saw the issue myself. Whereas, all the years before that, it was my parents who were like, you are sick, you need to get help, and we're going to get you help. So that was really like the turning point for me. And I had a very serious conversation with my parents where I was like, I get it. I see it now. I want to go back to Spain. I want to go to college. I want to, eventually have children, which if I at this rate, I'm not going to be able to have children. I won't even be able to go to college. They were going to have me, stay home and do it all virtual. So, I was like, I really want these. These are my goals, and I'm willing to work with you now. But what we've been doing beforehand, you just shoving me in different hospitals where they're force feeding me, you know, crappy processed foods isn't doing anything for, I didn't say this at the time like exactly, but it's not doing anything for my gut, it's not doing
Yeah.
anything for my neurotransmitters. I didn't understand that at the time, but I was like, it's not working. That's what I knew for sure. It's like, it's not working, it's not sticking. I don't feel well no matter what weight I'm at. And so like, okay, we get it. Again, my mom, amazing ass woman. She went back to her research, found this integrative clinic in Chicago, integrative psychiatrist, dietitian, naturopath doctors. It was the first time I was introduced to food as medicine and IV therapy as well. And I was very skeptical at first. I'm a skeptic for sure. I need to always number and not only do I need to see the data, but I need to actually try it my first and see that it works in order to truly believe. And so I was very skeptical, and I sort of did kind of want the quick fix. I was like, I'm not sleeping. I want the pill. And that slowly changed over a couple of years of me going like, okay, the Ambien is not making me, get any deeper of sleep, and it's actually leaving me feeling really crappy in the morning. So anyway, I could talk about my story for hours on end, but to conclude it so we can get into like the good stuff, into the hormones, which I know a lot of people are here for, I really hit rock bottom with my health, and me working with this integrative clinic just totally transformed my life. Not only because I transformed my health, but because got to learn. So I got to learn firsthand. And then education wise, I actually was studying nutrition and dietetics in undergrad. And I also, and then I saw the flaws in that system as well of like, oh my gosh, this is so sterile. This is so conventional based, and it's not in line with what I'm doing outside of the classroom for my own health with this incredible clinic. And so I started to see, all of the practitioners working with me. I saw it as like a team collaboration versus like, just tell me what to do. I was like, I want to understand what you're doing to me and how this is working, like how I'm actually feeling better. So it was both in and out of the classroom. When I graduated undergrad was when I started to question hormonal birth control. And that was also another really pivotal time in my life because at the time, I wasn't even taking Advil. If I had a headache, it was CBD. I was very natural based. However, I still wasn't sleeping the best. My libido was non-existent. And everyone reacts differently to hormonal birth control. I was still really kind of underweight with it. And I just didn't look well, and I didn't look like healthy and glowing because I wasn't ovulating. I didn't have my cycle. I didn't have my natural production of hormones. And so, and that's how my body, I'm a Vata dosha for anyone who loves Ayurvedic medicine. My body was trending more towards malnutrition. And so I stopped birth control after some research, and really doing my due diligence and setting myself up for like a 2 month prepping to get off, doing a great functional medicine detox to open up my elimination pathways. Got off birth control literally within the first month. I was sleeping again. And it was the first time I'd really, really slept like a full night's rest without any type of, sleep aid. And it was a deep sleep too, like one that you actually wake up from and you're like, oh, I don't have brain fog. I'm really well rested for the first time in since before I was in fifth grade. So it was life changing for me. I mean, I started to get cervical fluid again. My sex drive was coming back. All of a sudden, like I would just be like cooking in the kitchen. I'm like, I'm really horny right now. Wow, this is so amazing. And I can't even tell you the amount of times that I've heard in the last 2 years that I have stopped hormonal birth control that so many people are like, you are glowing. And it was so cool to hear that because, I could not remember hearing that before. So truly, like it was just life changing for me. I knew that I needed to change my blog, which at the time, I don't know how long you've been following me for. Anyone listening who are OGs, it was Madeline's cookbook beforehand, where I was really just preaching. I was sharing like healthy recipes, and I was preaching how food is nutrition, and I opened up a little bit about my eating disorder to support people on that front. But I totally did a 360 and was like, we're talking about menstrual health and also women's health because they're different. A lot of people think that they're the same, but not all women menstruate, and vice versa. Not all menstruators are women. So, really focusing on women's health as that branch, and then also menstrual health and educating on it. And it has been so empowering for me. It's finally like, oh my gosh, I've stepped into my power. I've stepped into what I was put on this earth to do. All of my struggles up until this point have gotten me to here. So I'm the founder of Peace Love Hormones. I think you said this in the intro, but we're just a period positive brand, and we really, our goal is to help and support and empower menstruators because so many of us walk into our, gynecologist office or a doctor's, office, and our symptoms are completely dismissed. And over 80% of us report experiencing PMS. So like there are a lot of people who say like, oh, we're so much healthier today. And it's just because like we do have a lot of medical technological advancements, but our quality of life has totally decreased across the board, but especially for menstruators. And so, we see a rise in PCOS and endometriosis and, endometrial cancers. And ovarian cancers as well. So we really, we're not doing something right. And it's never just one thing. It's so many things that are impacting our hormones. But, that's where so that was like my story, how I got into it. And like my passion for it is really just because so many of us are unwell. And I'm sure a lot of people listening to this episode too are like raising their hand and they're like, this is why I'm here. This is why I'm listening to it. Cause I too don't feel my best, whether it be something as, you know, life altering as like a PCOS or endometriosis diagnosis, or it's something of just like, I feel fine. I just have no libido and it's impacting my relationship. So, that's where I come in, and that's where Peace Love Hormones comes in. So much educational content that we put out there for free, like our podcast and YouTube and Instagram. And then there's you can work with me one-on-one in my private practice. And then I have my herbal supplement and some really awesome courses coming out in 2022. So everyone just make sure that you stay up to date with that because I think the courses will be a game changer. Just like how podcasts are so great, like people can just listen to them anywhere, anytime. Same thing with a course. You just do it at your own pace.
Wow. I mean, I did not realize the depth of your story, and to hear that and see your platform. I mean, it just puts so much meaning behind it. And to hear that you've gone through these struggles and like where you came from, that, I mean, just it's even more reassuring than like seeing how much knowledge you share. And you are right. You are a skeptic and you're very open about that, which I love because in your industry, since it is relatively new, and when people hear like naturopathic, when they hear like Eastern medicine, when they hear herbs, a lot of they're like, but it's like, that's older than the medicine that we have today. Like that's not new. What we are doing,
Thousands of years old.
yeah,
Yeah.
what we're doing is new. And you're right. It's not all bad, but it's definitely not great. Um, okay, and on your platform, you talk a lot about says peace, love, hormones, and talk a lot about healing your hormones. And I remember when I found you, I was looking, it was through Reels, true marketing, like
Yay, I'm
really
so
work.
happy they're working.
Oh, your reels are great. And I remember I found you through reels and I was like, what does that mean? What does that mean? Because I think even some people may be listening and be like, oh, I feel fine until I start, seeing some of your content and being like, oh, that's not normal. Like I shouldn't be feeling that. I'm talking about bloating. But like certain things where I was like, oh, this isn't a standard of life that I have to live by. Like there's more past that. So what does it mean to heal your hormones?
Totally. So, and I loved this question, and I'm really happy that I saw this, um, that you asked this, in our shared Google Doc, because our hormones, they're simply chemical messengers, and I think a lot of people, even like doctors and practitioners, they don't. Either they don't know this, I don't know because it's all social media. So, you only know so much of the picture, but either they don't understand this themselves or they just aren't talking about it. But hormones they're just chemical messengers within our bodies. So when we run a hormone lab, or maybe we're just doing a symptom questionnaire and we're like, okay, there's clearly estrogen dominance, which just means that there is more estrogen compared to progesterone. Estrogen and progesterone, those are the two main female sex hormones. We have more, but those are the two main. Those are the ones that really govern our menstrual cycle. And so, when we see that there's an imbalance within our hormones, we really need to dig deeper. So that's really just like our red light for, hey, something's going on, Maddie, like something on a deeper level. So that's where and so basically what I'm trying to say by that is treating like the hormones, whether it be with a pharmaceutical drug or with whatever, is really actually just another band-aid approach. So we really need to like figure out why your hormones are out of balance. So why is estrogen higher, or is your body not producing enough progesterone? Are you not ovulating? Why aren't you ovulating? It's kind of like an onion. So, when I'm working with someone, it's such an onion. Like I have so many questions to ask that slowly peel back the onion and really get to like the core. Like, okay, what is going on? Is it chronic stress, which chronic stress literally precedes 80+% of all dis-ease of the body. So we pretty much can always say, especially in the world that we live in, unless someone's living like barefoot, naked on an island somewhere, we all have stress. Like, unfortunately, this is the world that we live in today. And stress is good. Stress is good when it is controlled. So too much of a good thing is bad, too much of a bad thing is bad. You get what I'm saying. So really just trying to figure out like what is going on within the body on a very root cause level. And so with me, I look to the major vital organs, and I also look to your cells. How are your cells performing? Like, does your mitochondria need help? Which is mitochondria. We have, anywhere from a couple hundred to a couple thousand. On average, we have about 50,000 mitochondria per cell in our ovaries, which is crazy. So if you think about it, like that is truly the root. Like, is the mitochondria working? The mitochondria converts our food into energy and allows all of our cells to work. Our cells are working, our organs are working, So we really have to look at a whole body perspective, but a really deep, deep level. Is the pancreas producing, it's leptin, like all of these things, like what is going on within the body? And then from there, we can do some uncovering. Now, I'm not saying everyone always needs this much like depth. I would say if you're really struggling with extreme PMS, or some type of hormone imbalance, then yes, we need, or like uncontrollable weight gain or uncontrollable weight loss, then yes, we're looking really, really deep. But, also a lot of menstruators just have bloating or cramping or whatever it is. And honestly, by talking to them for 5 to 10 minutes, I can figure out what they're doing on a day-to-day basis or even throughout their cycle that's causing that, and what lifestyle change to make and what herb and perhaps supplement if that's needed, to use to help with that. So yeah, so that's what it means to have like healthy To heal your hormones, it's to heal your entire body because again, like your hormones are just they're just messengers, so they're going to tell you if something's going on within the body. So it really is like it could be so many things. Healing your hormones could mean healing your gut or healing your liver. It just depends on the person.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And the onion example, that's so, um, I guess, a great image of how you educate and what you talk about and like the why. And it's so important. And oh my, when you're saying like how stress is like such a huge thing, everybody's like, oh, are you stressed? Are you stressed? But stress has really been, that word has been watered down. And like one of my clients, she's a dietitian, and I work with social media. And so I do a lot of research based on what my clients, talk about, because we need to talk about it. And that's who we're the ones who's writing. So she wanted to talk about stress. And so I was like, okay, well, what's important to stress for her was, talk about weight loss. And she was like, well, stress raises your cortisol levels, and that's super unhealthy. And cortisol levels can actually hold on to like those fat cells, and that can really disrupt your sleep cycle, disrupt all these things, and cause you to not lose weight, which was the goal of that particular post. But I was like, oh my gosh, like that went so much farther than just saying, stress. It's like, what does the stress do? And why is that a problem? I was like, that's
Totally.
so interesting. So
And
when you
and
said that, I was like, yeah, no, stress is a major factor in your bodily function.
Totally. And to go even deeper with that, so cortisol, yes, typical stress hormone that we think of when it comes to like stress hormones, but also norepinephrine and adrenaline, those are also stress hormones that those are released into the gut, and that impacts it literally kills off the good bacteria, which allows for more overgrowth of the bad bacteria, and it also thins the lining of our gut. So our gut is comprised of a bunch of called little villi, and they're just like these little, like everyone should just Google search what it looks like a little graphic. They're these little like kind of fuzzy looking, I don't even know, like grass or something. And so, when it's impacting, when we have these stress hormones being released into the gut and, an improperly balanced gut microbiome, that's impacting the space between the villi and causing them to create more space in between them. So, again, this is like, coined by, whoever, like a leaky gut. So, a lot of people are like, your gut's not actually leaky. It's just that the space between the villi, it's too big. And it's letting a bunch of like proteins and toxins and things that should not be released into the bloodstream be released into the bloodstream. So yeah, no, she totally got it right. Like I agree with you. I think it's just kind of thrown out there all the time. Like stress impacts you. And if people really knew the science behind like what stress is and what it does to the body, I think I always remind myself of that too, because I tend to like be more vata and be more masculine in terms of like we got to get a bunch done every single day. We need, especially being a business owner. And I just have to remind myself of like, oh, this is going to, maybe my business will be flourishing, but like my health is going to
For a
deteriorate, which
short term.
actually, yeah,
For a
for
short
short term,
term.
because then my health is going to deteriorate and then it's going to show in my business, in my social, in my personal life. So, yeah, like, that's a whole nother topic that we again could talk for at least an hour on, just like how stress impacts. I'm so happy though that you have clients who are in the wellness space because isn't that cool? Because then you're learning at the same time.
I learned so much. It was like an adverse effect of starting the business. I was like, I feel like I'm gaining so much knowledge, which is such a fun part of the job.
Mhm.
But yes, no, I mean, getting that information and the lifestyle that is currently normalized is like such a contributor in how we eat. Oh, it's just crazy. And yes, we can go into so many topics. And guys, I highly recommend you listen to her podcast, because again, if you can see how like dense even these, like we've been talking for not that long, and how dense the information is, she's got so much information on her podcast. And follow her on Instagram. Like there's just so much to learn about. So go binge for sure.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I do want to talk about the menstrual cycles, because this is something I remember I saw you post something about it, and then I tried to read about it, and I was like, I'm so confused. And I love the phases. I don't know if it's not the cycles of menstrual phases. You see, like I don't even know. What are
Hey, it's
these
okay.
phases that you talk about? And you talk about eating for your phases and working for your phases and all these type of things. Can you, yeah, just explain that in real layman's terms?
Yes, totally. And for anyone who wants to go deeper on this as well, I have podcast episodes on this, on the four phases of your cycle, how to work out, how to eat for them, how to structure your business around them, and just give yourself a lot of more love and grace. So, our menstrual cycle is on average, again, this is average, but like 26 to 32 days. Anything shorter than that or longer than that, for, a couple of months, a couple of cycles in a row, we start to look for like, is anything going on? But our cycle is actually so, why we have a bleed is because so much is going on in the days leading up to your bleed. When you're bleeding because you're shedding your endometrium, which is your uterine lining. So up until that point, we say that the first phase of the cycle, and I know some people have, they like to view their period, their bleed, as actually the end of a cycle. However, I say it's the first part of your cycle. So the first day of your bleed, you can start tracking that as the first day of your entire menstrual cycle. And, the menstrual phase is when all of our hormones are at their lowest. Again, like I said, we're shedding our endometrium that we had been building up the entire cycle before then. And, with that, you may feel a little bit more emotional or whatever you want to call it. Again, we never want to be extreme for anything, but it's also very normal for you to feel lower energy. I'm about to have my period. I definitely feel lower energy compared to other phases. And that's totally okay. This morning I went for a walk instead of, during my higher energy phases where maybe I'm out on a jog, or I don't really jog that much anymore because my hormones hate it, but a bike ride, or, weight training. I opted for a walk this morning out in the beautiful sun, and, a lot more like grace and going slower and not as many social things during this time because our hormones are at their lowest, our energy is at their lowest. And then we start to transition into what we call the follicular phase, which is we call it the follicular phase because our follicle stimulating hormone is on the rise, and it's on the rise to help create follicles. Follicles are, our eggs, sacs containing our eggs. And so the FSH is on the rise. And with that, we do start to see this natural increase in energy. And so it's also a very creative time. Our brain changes on average about like 25% over the course of our cycle. So, between our hormone changes and changes in our brain, we are feeling much more able to like plan and be creative. So this is a time where I tell my partner, I'm like, if you want to do any trips or plan anything out, let's do it right now. Like, let's plan. Also, like, it's a great time for business owners to be, kind of like going, what do we want to get accomplished within like the next few weeks, and like creating a skeleton outline, of like, okay, so I want to host an event. So I'm going to do it during the next 2 weeks because my energy is going to be the highest. And then I will, all those emails I collect, this is just an example, all those emails I collect, I'm going to reach out and nurture those relationships from the event during my luteal phase because, we'll talk about why that you may feel more prone to, nurture relationships during that time. But it's really just like planning out. Like, you're planning, you have high energy, it's great. And your energy is starting to increase, estrogen starts to increase, which naturally decreases our follicle stimulating hormone because we only need one egg for ovulation. And so the estrogen starts to increase. And then we have a peak in testosterone, which is, I mean, kind of non-existent for the most part during our cycles as menstruators. And then we get this peak in our testosterone and our estrogen, and that is what we know as ovulation. And that's when we feel like all of this energy. You don't need as much sleep. You still need sleep. You still need sleep, but you don't need as much. You don't need as much of like the grounding, kind of carb heavier meals per se. You just feel lighter. You feel more energized, and you're like a little fairy. I say you're like a little fairy. You're super social. Again, this is all like keeping it in perspective of like how you are as a person, like what your constitution is. So, my ovulatory phase self is different than yours. So, for example, like I still am not doing I am not to the point yet where I feel comfortable doing crazy high intensity workouts, but I'll do my strength training during this time and I'll do cycling. For someone else who's maybe has had their hormones on track for much longer than I have, maybe they are doing the high intensity workouts because of, where they are in their life and, their body constitution. So, this is like the super high energy, high social phase. And then we start to get into our luteal phase, which is the longest phase. It's the 2 weeks leading up to our bleed. And so our hormones are starting to decline. It's not like just overnight, boom, they're like, at their lowest again. It's a slow, gradual, decline. Like our entire cycle is this nice, beautiful little flow if everything's balanced. We do have a second peak of estrogen during the luteal phase. So, I always feel like a little burst of energy where I'm like, oh, I'm creating all this content. Like I even just felt it last week. I just spent hours creating content and then, the next day I was like slumped. And I was like, I'm so tired. And I'm going to go more inward now. So, yeah. And like the luteal phase, if you think about it on primal terms, so if we would have successfully fertilized an egg during that 12 to 24 hours, only 12 to 24 hours that we ovulate, which is crazy.
Wait, can you repeat that? Because that was
Yes.
like, I was like, I'm so sorry. We're gonna get into hormonal birth control, guys, because that's definitely a selfish question. And so, I want to be open about my journey. But
Totally.
like when you said that, I was like, I'm so sorry. What did you just say?
Totally. So we actually only ovulate for a span of 12 to 24 hours every cycle. However, we do have this ovulation phase, we call it this fertile phase of like anywhere from 5 to like maximum would be 7 days. That is me just leaning more on the cautious side because there are some people who are like, I use this for prevention or pregnancy prevention and I do not want to get pregnant right now. So I'm like, just take a week out of your cycle then to just have protected sex with condoms or abstain completely. But yeah, and we say that we're fertile because the pH of our vagina changes dramatically during the days leading up to ovulation, so that if you do have unprotected sex, it actually keeps sperm alive. And then our cervical fluid changes consistency as well, so that it can not only does it transport the sperm to, be able to fertilize an egg, but it also weeds out the bad sperm, which is so magnificent that like our cervical fluid can do that, it's incredible. So it's, yes, it's the sperm fertilizing the egg, but we still have control over what sperm gets to fertilize it. So, and then outside of that phase, like between the pH of our vagina, our cervix being literally closed, you can stick your fingers up and feel if your cervix is open or closed. And then also the cervical fluid not being the right, again, pH or consistency to transport sperm. We cannot, it's like scientifically proven, we can't get pregnant outside of that. Now, of course, people have sporadic ovulation. So um, that's a different story. But if you are using the fertility awareness method and you're tracking your fertile signs every day, and also you're keeping stress at bay, and you've had a consistent cycle, I mean, your sporadic ovulations, that's not going to be very prevalent in your life, So I've been using it for the last 2 years. I haven't gotten pregnant. I've known people who've used it their entire sexual life. So 15 plus years, and they're like, I've never gotten pregnant. And when I did want to get pregnant, I got pregnant because I knew how to track it. So yeah, it's really, really cool, right? It's like wild that we're fed this narrative that we need to be on hormonal birth control because we're fertile all the time, and we're not.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. So I love your education around that. And since like we're moving into the topic, let's talk about hormonal birth control because I mean I've been on hormonal birth control since I was 16. Again, acne, and so they put me on birth control and whatever, what have you. People get on it for different reasons, and then I just kind of have stayed on it and not really thought about it. And I'm getting married soon, and I'm learning more and learning more, especially about the people who are having problems getting pregnant and having how long it takes to, it almost feels like reset after getting off of hormonal birth control. I'm like, that doesn't sound right. Like that just doesn't sound like something I want to do. And all of these things, I don't know, that I'm learning more and more about. I'm like, this doesn't feel like something I should have or be on.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to get into that.
Yeah, so there are so many effects of hormonal birth control. It's a very serious medication that is shutting down vital organ function and impairing other vital organs functioning, such as like the liver, which our liver is like, what a car filter is to a car, that's what it is for our body. It's filtering out all the bad stuff. So when it's impacting our liver and our guts, everything's going to go haywire with our health. If maybe the pill suppresses that for some people. For a lot of people, it doesn't suppress it, and they start to experience all of these crazy things while they're on the pill. And for a lot of people, I didn't experience too many of that when I was on the pill. Like the low libido, non-existent libido, correction.
Can you
Um,
define libido as well? Because
yes,
that might be a
libido.
new word for some
Libido
people.
is sex drive. I'm sorry. Thank you
No,
for
you're fine. You're fine.
and yeah, I forget that like what is first language to me is, first of all, was not a first language to me, some years ago. And for a lot of people it's not either. So thank you. It's libido is sex drive. And so, but what I was trying to say is, a lot of people experienced way worse symptoms on hormonal birth control. So I was like, oh, I mean, yeah, I don't sleep the best, and yeah, I don't have much of a sex drive, but like, I think I'm fine. But really, it was just suppressing everything that I was doing, and all of this stuff that I had to work on when it came to my gut, my liver, total body detoxification. Like I have had to do so much work, still am doing work. It's a journey because of the world that we live in. But doing a lot of work since coming off the pill. So anyway, it has both physiological and neurological side effects. And it just, simply put, it works in very unnatural ways. And our body sees it as an invader. Again, because it's shutting down certain, vital processes of our bodies, such as like ovulation. It's shutting down the ovaries and it's shutting down ovulation, which is super important for, having healthy ovulation is really important for our both short-term and long-term health, especially when it comes to menopause, and making sure that we have, number one, not an early menopause, but a normal onset of menopause, and that it's not, it's not painful. It's not like we're getting heat flashes, hot flashes, and weight gain, or all of the crazy unfortunate side effects that a lot of women are experiencing in menopause. It shouldn't be something that's scary. It should be something that it's just a natural process of life. But a lot of women experience painful ones, just like they had painful periods when they were younger, because they didn't get proper support and education on that. So, birth control, it does cause major disruptions and imbalances within the body, which can express itself in any of the following or all of the following side effects. So I'll name some basic ones like weight gain and hormonal acne, autoimmune issues, detoxification issues, anxiety, depression, insomnia, decreased sex drive. A lot of things fall under to the in the bucket of side effects of hormonal birth control. Someone may be asking right now, like, why didn't my doctor tell me this before hopping on the pill? Like, this wasn't told to me. And like, I agree with you, I wasn't told either. And, I didn't go through traditional medical school myself, so I can't say firsthand what is going on in those halls and in those classrooms. However, I have connected with numerous medical doctors, some of which even went through my same schooling program. So I was with them, who spoke first-handedly on their experience in medical school and the little to no training they got on the female reproductive system, the harmful side effects of medications such as hormonal birth control, or even nutrition, and how the food we eat impacts our body, and how, we should be using food and lifestyle first before any other intervention. They don't learn preventative medicine. Medical school it's owned by pharmaceuticals companies, and pharmaceutical companies only earn their profit if we're sick. So, I understand that that's like a really disheartening thing to learn.
I worked in a pharmaceutical lab before
Oh,
I
wow.
left and
Wow. Yeah.
became
So,
creative. I'm chemistry by, I guess you could say, like academics or background. So when you when people like, get angry at the pharmaceutical industry, I'm like, I understand. Like I
Wow. Yeah, that's so
internally.
powerful. Wow, that's so cool. Maybe I have to have you on my podcast to talk about that and your experience with that. But, like I have this amazing friend here in Austin, Texas, who went through medical school, and she was Indian. So she grew up with, Ayurvedic medicine was just their family's way of life. And Ayurvedic medicine, for anyone listening, I mean, it's the oldest form of medicine. It is bioindividuality at its prime. All of our forms of medicine have stemmed from, Ayurvedic medicine. It's incredible. So anyway, she was like, my classmates were going out drinking. They were drinking coffee to stay up all night long to study. Like they weren't healthy themselves because even our, institution wasn't encouraging that. So if doctors don't learn how to be healthy themselves, how can they help others be healthy? And that's why you go into the doctor's office and they're not addressing, nutrition or lifestyle. I mean, maybe there are some out there, but that's only the ones who have also gone through and got extra, side training themselves. And also they can't really practice like that. So a lot of doctors are giving up their titles so that they can practice. And it's not just like, they're writing up a prescription. Like literally, I was in the gynecologist. It was supposed to be a naturopath gynecologist. It wasn't. A couple months ago in Austin, I found a midwife now. So for anyone concerned for me, don't worry, I found a midwife.
What
But
is a midwife? I don't know
a
what that
midwife,
is.
just like so I go in, a midwife, it has a lot of roles within, your life. So they can run your pap smears and all of your typical gynecologic checkups and such, but they're going to give you, it's just like a natural gynecologist. They're going to give you, again, the lifestyle, the herbs, the supplements, everything that
Gotcha.
you should be
Okay.
doing. And also they can help with the birthing process. So for anyone who wants like an at-home birth, a midwife and usually a doula as well. I'm
Yeah,
not,
I've heard those, but I was like, are those the same or no? I
yeah,
don't know.
they're not the same. They're not the same. But the doula, like you could have a hospital birth and still have a doula. My sister-in-law just had a
Oh,
hospital
okay.
birth and she had a doula in there. More so just like helping you with like the pre, the during, and the post birth process. But everyone's different. It's just like how
Yeah.
every practitioner and doctor are different. Some maybe practice a little bit more natural than others. So anyway, she was saying that like, going through medical school, it was just she got to see the downsides and like the little that they learn. So it's like, how can we expect, our doctors to help us if they don't even know how to help themselves? So that's really what I was trying to get at.
Yeah.
And there's so many other ways to prevent pregnancy naturally. So the
Okay.
Fertility America,
Yeah. Talk about the fertility tracking. And I'm going to go
yeah.
ahead and ask the question because we're going to have a disclaimer at the front of this episode anyway for anybody listening with their children. And I don't like it when people like due to manners like try to skirt around things. I'm like, no, I need to know it all. So when you say fertility tracking and before you said like it's impossible and like that's what people use as birth control, is that like it like they're doing it like all the way, like they're not using pull out method or condoms or anything like in supplement to that, like that's like it. I always I think other people have these questions and these are mine. I'm like,
Yeah,
are
no,
you
they're
like
also valid.
are you are you full sending when you're, you know what I mean?
They're all valid questions. And I have an entire podcast episode on the fertility awareness method too, because it's a lengthy one.
Okay,
So for
great.
anyone listening, please do not just listen to this, quick explanation of it. Like if you're going to use this, make sure that you actually, or even like there are fertility awareness method practitioners who you can actually work with to make sure that you're doing this all right. So, podcasts are always just supposed to, enlighten you with new topics
Yes,
and new
this isn't
information.
a
And yeah, you need
podcast.
to
Yeah.
go and do the research. But yeah, I mean, the fertility awareness method, it's just tracking your cycle, tracking your fertile signs. So I mentioned them before, but that's your cervix, sticking your fingers up your vagina, seeing if your cervix is open or closed. When it's open, it's going to feel like your chin. When it's closed, it's going to feel like the tip of your nose. You're tracking your cervical fluid throughout your cycle and then your basal body temperature as well. So there's so many great trackers out there. I have some great discount codes for like Daisy thermometer.
Okay.
I also have a one for temp drop bracelet, which I'm actually moving towards because I'm spacey in the mornings and I forget to take my temperature and you need to take it before you get up out of bed. So I do have a Daisy thermometer, but I need to actually set up my Ava bracelet because that's just a wearable that you wear on your arm all night long. So it's just tracking those fertile signs. And that's the fertility awareness method. And so you can have unprotected sex. If it makes you feel more comfortable, he doesn't have to finish inside of you even when you aren't fertile, but you don't have to wear a condom if you don't want to, and you can be a little bit more lenient with that and then still have him finish outside of you. It really just depends on what you're comfortable with. If you're going to be someone who's like, I know I'm not fertile right now, I'm not ovulating, but if he finishes inside of me, I'm going to be, an anxious mess for the rest of my cycle,
Yeah.
then don't have him finish inside of you. It's your body, your vessel. You get to be in charge with what you want to do with it. Um, so there's the fertility awareness method. There's always condoms, especially when you are in your fertile days, making sure that you're wearing condoms. They're male condoms, they're female condoms. I have not used a female condom because I'm like, boy, you are fertile all the time. You can wear the condom.
Yeah, that's, you
You
can
can
do
wear the
one
condom.
thing. We do a lot. You can do this one
Exactly,
thing.
exactly. I push humans out of me. You can wear a condom. And my partner is like the most supportive that one could possibly be. So, he is, there's never been an argument or even like a slight hesitation with like, hey,
Yeah.
you're doing this,
Yeah, and there shouldn't be with
No, there
a
shouldn't. There shouldn't.
conversation. Like they should feel, or at least make sure that you feel you're most comfortable.
Totally. And like there's vasectomies and there's sterilization and it just depends on, like some vasectomies can be reversible. I have met some women who are like, no, I've worked in, that type of clinic before and there are so many men who it's not reversible for. So, just making sure like if you are going to go that route, being okay with the possibility that it may not be reversible. So if you
Mhm.
do want kids in the future, this is definitely something to consider for sure. And then there are also some, companies out there. I don't know how many there are. I'm familiar with one called Phexi, and it's a gel, a contraceptive gel that actually changes the pH of your vagina. So you insert it within your vagina up to an hour before sex. And it's supposed to change the pH of your vagina to make it hospitable for sperm. And it's funny, anyone who knows me would laugh at the argument that I had with one of the practitioners over text because that's what they're like, consultation concierge is before they can write you the prescription. Phexi is, by the way, owned by a pharmaceutical company. But first of all, it's unnatural. It's, the gel itself, and it's unnatural to be changing the pH of our
Yeah.
vagina. And a lot of us experience yeast infections and UTIs. And I just say, don't mess with the pH of any of that stuff within our
Yeah.
body. Just
Oh, for sure.
let it be. Wear a condom, my goodness. So there's so many things that we can do. And yeah, the pull-out method, I know so many people who are like, I don't track my cycle because I'm lazy. We just always use the pull-out method. So, it really just depends on the trust there. It depends on the risk as
Mhm.
well. Like, if you are married, you've been with your partner for a long time, you're married, you both have stable jobs, maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing if you actually did get pregnant. Then that's a very different risk compared to, you know, a girl in college who
Yeah.
is just, dating someone or whatever the situation is. There's absolutely no judgment here. A one night stand versus I've been married to this person
Mhm.
and they're my lifelong partner. So,
Yeah, your
people have
methods will
different
be
risks
different.
that they need. Yeah, people have different risks that they need to weigh out for sure. Some people, like again, one of my best friends here has only ever used the pull out method, only ever. And or well, at least for like the last like 6 years. Yeah, I'm sorry. She actually was on hormonal birth control before, but for 6 years she was using the pull-out method only. And she's like, I've never even had a scare of it. So it just depends too on like is your partner good with that? Like is he gonna be able to withhold
There is
until
a
he
skill level.
there's a skill level for sure. And semen retention is something that my partner and I have been getting really interested into to optimize his hormones actually. So that's, a different topic for another time, but for anyone who's listening who has a male partner, semen retention actually is being shown to have a lot of benefits for their hormones and just like the functionings of their body and their brain. So we're trying to figure out right now, like what's a good amount of time for Braxton, my partner, to be withholding for, and at what point does it get to be like too much for him? Like he needs to, release it
Yeah.
because it is their livelihood. But
Yeah.
to finish up this specific topic, I, I have this amazing analogy that I always like to give. So if there was like a deserted island and you placed one woman and 90 men on that island, there's only a chance for within that 9 to 10 months for there to be one pregnancy. One pregnancy. Now, if you had one male and 99 women on an island, there would be an opportunity for 99 pregnancies over the course of those 9 to 10 months. That's a way of me saying men, for the most part, of course, there are men fertility issues as well, because again, they're impacted by the toxins and all of this stuff and the overstress and autoimmune issues that, we face as well to a lesser degree, but it's still there. But generally speaking, a male in his reproductive years every single day he's fertile. And so like I personally agree. I personally think that it should be more on them. Of course, it's a two-way street, but I really do like I told my partner before we started dating, he already listened to my podcast. He's followed me on Instagram.
He
He
knew what he was getting
knew
into.
he knew what he was getting into. And he was like, I'm totally for it and I totally agree. And I was like, you know what? I'm done being with partners where like again it's sort of placed on me and it's not on brand for me. I don't like it. And
It's
this
not
needs
on
to
brand.
be,
I love that. It's just not
this,
on brand.
it's not on brand for me. Okay. I need you to take control. I need you to step into the masculine and I need you to take control of this. And he totally did. And it was amazing. We're recording a podcast with each other very soon because so many of my followers are like, we want to know your story and we don't want to know everything. So keep a lookout for that as well.
Love it. Okay. Yes, definitely, guys. And again, just reiterate all this information. Go to her podcast, find the episode of whatever information you want to find. She has so much information there. Go to her platform, do your own research, all the things, if you are wanting to look more into that. And thank you for being open with those questions and everything that I think some people are afraid to ask. And I have a general rule of my own that if I'm afraid to ask it, that means somebody else is afraid to ask it. And that means I have to ask it, no matter
Yes.
how uncomfy or who may be listening. So
Thank you so much for asking that. Just to go back to what you said originally about, I remember you prefaced the topic with, hey, if you have little kids, get them out of the room. And, I do want to challenge a lot of parents to start having these conversations from an early age, because I think this is where a lot of, even just like the hormone disruptions with young girls and feeling like, oh my gosh, I think this is just what it is to be a woman, to have a menstrual cycle, because these conversations aren't being had. And I think there's a lot of shame around sex and sexual desire for women as well. And a lot of things that are carried on with us throughout our lives impact us in so many ways that we don't even know, we're not fully conscious of. And then we pass that on to our children as well. So, I challenge everyone to break the cycle and to start having these conversations, because that we're all doing it. And that's how we're all here. We're here from sex. And so just having open, honest conversations about them and cultivating that love and trust, I think it's only going to be positive.
yeah. Oh,
Personally, my opinion.
no, that's a good message. And that's so important. And you're right. Those stigmas and those messages can be really harmful when we don't talk about them freely, and can lead to poor things down the road, and poor mental health and views on things. So no, I love that message. Thank you for sharing that. To kind of wrap this all up, we talked about a lot of information and we could go on forever, but if somebody is interested in like taking the step, they're like, listen, I'm new, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, what are the fundamentals? Like, what are some steps like that I can take to start on this journey?
Totally. I always say start with foundation. So before you start, you know, supplementing and doing all this stuff, make sure that the foundations are there. So make sure that you're sleeping enough every single night. Make sure that you're hydrating with enough water and that it's quality water. Tap water is absolute crap. So make sure that you have a good, you know, filter system. I love my Berkey. De-stressing, huge. You must de-stress. Like if you're running on stress hormones, like it doesn't matter what you're eating or, like what supplements you're taking, they're not going to be able to work at all, or at least not to their full capability if you're running on stress hormones. So we got to get the foundations down. And then to optimize, because that's what it's about. And a lot of people do come to me and they're like, we want to optimize. We're sleeping, we're doing all the stuff, we want to optimize. So again, foundation, sleep, water, nutrition, and de-stressing. But to optimize, I say take herbal medicine, especially if there's, breast tenderness going on or there's cramping, whatever it is. Herbs. I love to match herbs to symptoms and start tracking your cycle and living cyclically with it, because for a lot of people, it's like not pushing themselves through a crazy hard workout during their period actually results in reduced bloating, reduced cramping. And I really did just quickly want to say, because you asked me, you're like, is bloating normal?
Yeah. Okay.
And
Yeah.
no, it's not. I think it's like thrown out way too much. I think there's not, it's a range, it's always a range. So should our stomachs be a little bit protruded after we've, consumed liquids and food? Yes, because there's more substance in our body. However, bloating, like extreme bloating and cramping,
And
no,
pain.
something's going on, so no, I know that there's so many body positive influencers out there. Love them. I love their mission, their goal with their mission, where they're posting pictures of them being super bloated and being like, hey, this is painful, but this is okay, this is us, like, embrace yourself. It shouldn't be painful, and it shouldn't look like you are 9 months pregnant. It should, again, like I said, after you eat a meal, your stomach is a little bit protruded. That's
Yeah.
normal. To be so bloated and gassy and having gastrointestinal issues, we got to look at the GI tract.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a difference between being common and being normal.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not the same. And so many of these things are common, but they're not normal. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for saying that. I actually wrote that in my notes too.
Thank you so much for coming on and pouring out information.
Of
We're going to link
course.
everything that you have to offer in our show notes because there's so much. But can you tell us a little bit about some of your, I know you've got some products. We didn't even get to touch on the fact that you started a supplement, like you made a supplement and you have your own. That's insane. Like I would love to talk to you more about that later, but you have a supplement, you've got a book. Let's do just a little promo for everywhere that people can get your information.
Absolutely. Yeah. So everyone follow me on Instagram, please, and connect with me. Share this podcast if you listen. I love seeing that so much. I think the greatest part about my job is connecting with people and like hearing like the positive impact I've made on their life. It makes it so much worth it. So that's what fuels me. That's what fuels me for real. And then yeah, my herbal supplement, Soothe. It's there to help you balance out your menstrual cycle. So whether you have, amenorrhea, you're ovulating too frequently, or you're not ovulating enough. You have PMS, which there are over 160 symptoms associated with PMS. If you're experiencing PMS, pretty much the only people I say to not take it are people with PCOS that have high levels of progesterone and or luteinizing hormone. But other than that, it's an amazing herbal supplement. It'll adapt to what your body needs. Comes from a GMP certified lab, an FDA regulated lab, which there are only 4 in the country. So it just has to go through really, really extensive research and trials before it's actually allowed to be on the market. And have a whole clinical team behind me. It's not just me, and just an amazing team. I love the Peace Love Hormones tribe for sure. And then I have my Hormone Harmony book. I just released a holiday one, so I added some more holiday friendly recipes in there because I feel like with so many people, I feel like my practice gets so busy after the holidays because people feel so crappy after the holidays, and that's not how it should be. We should be feeling great all the time. So I have some amazing recipes in there. I also have gift ideas because I don't like I'm not like I literally wear clothes that are like years old, but like for me, it's always worth it to drop like money.
Mhm.
It's like the best investment on your health. And so I actually gift everyone in my family, all my loved ones, with something that has to do with health and that's going to
Oh, I
make their
love
lives
that.
better. Yeah, to make their lives better. They can always count on me for like the health stuff and hacking their, you know, bodily functions. So yeah, I have just a bunch of like cool added additions in there. So I really recommend to everyone. The Hormone Harmony book is on my website, but if it's around the holidays, to make sure to go for that holiday one because it just has everything. And it's a great stocking stuffer too. So I've had a lot of people be like, I'm gifting this to my sister. And I'm like, yay, spread the love. And I also have like my favorite brands in there when it comes to like non-toxic cooking wear, like matchas, what type of nut milks I consume and what type of nut milks I make and just all of the things. So definitely check that out. And then yeah, go listen to our podcast because I release a podcast episode sometimes every week, but at least every other week, and blog post and all the above. So thank you for having me on and for giving me the space to talk about something that is so important and that is so taboo in this society still.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your information. Congratulations on all the business success you've had over the last year and releasing your herbal supplement. Like that's freaking amazing. Guys, if you're interested in any of her products, she's so generous. If you use the code podcast, you actually get 10% off of the Peace Love Hormones products. So that's the book, that's a supplement, that's everything. So definitely go take a look. Follow her on every single thing. As you can tell, she's got a lot of information to share. If you liked this podcast episode, please go share, tag Attainable Podcast at Attainable Podcast, and also tag her at Peace Love Hormones so that we can tag and shout out and share and all the things, sharing does so much for the podcast, and we're all friends here. So that is the best way to support us.
Heck yeah. Peaceful hormones.
I hope you guys enjoyed and you learned a lot today, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.